is January the 5th, 2022, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. You can join us every morning here at Infinite Plane Radio. We'll be broadcasting at Free Earth Radio, so if you go to ferlive.com, again, that's ferlive.com, you can participate in the chat there with those listeners. So this is the Flat Earth Report for 1/5/22. This is probably the longest running podcast on the topic, and Free Earth Radio is the station that carries us now. It says here, this is on their site, Free Earth Radio is proud to present Flat Earth Report featuring Tim Osman. Now, the concept for the Flat Earth Report has always been breaking down all of the relevant news having to do with alternative cosmography, hoaxes having to do with science, fake, big hoaxes, lunar landing stuff, Mars travel, space travel in general, what the space papacy is up to, and now the space wars, which is the newest thing. And I focus on these things with this particular podcast because the news media distorts it all. They do not report things accurately. They never will. They have a bias built into their worldview, which I don't. And since the listeners of this podcast don't either, we don't need to waste time pretending to believe in this stuff. We can just watch it, break it down real time with the level of situational awareness that we have. So this is an article from Reuters. U.S. Space Force holds war games to test satellite network. Okay, so they're having war games in, quote, space. It's a 10-day long war game simulating cutting edge of U.S. space capability. So this is going on concurrent with all of the television programming, preparing people for space wars. So this is a theme that's building up both in the military, the movies. Here you go, U.S. Space Force holding games. So from my perspective, and the reality of it is, the corona, COVID, lockdown, pandemic, all this was nothing but a war game. A computer-aided simulation, just like this. And we lived through it and treated it as real. You know, and recently we've been speaking a lot about the movie Don't Look Up, which is kind of funny. Last night someone brought this up. They said, hey, Don't Look Up might have a double meaning. Not just don't look up, something might come down from space, a comet, an asteroid, but don't look up information for yourself. Don't do your own research. This is from Peterson Space Force Base, Colorado. The United States is testing, that's like Disneyland for adults. It's a whole military base for this charade. The United States is testing satellite resiliency to threats from China and Russia miles above the Earth's surface, just weeks after Russia shot down a communication satellite. So they're shooting down their own satellites because they didn't sign that little line on the treaty, the Outer Space Treaty, that says, thou shalt not use anti-satellite ballistics in low Earth orbit. And Russia and China, India, and a few others conveniently didn't sign off on that. That's how I saw early on, I said, this is going to lead to something. It says the computer-aided simulations included potential shooting down of U.S. missile tracking satellites, satellite jamming, and other electronic warfare effects that are not possible, that are now, this is, again, space war. It says actual satellites are not used. So it's all simulation and it's happening up above. But I think it's really going to be taking place in your mind, in TV land, in the metaverse. For most part, it's going to happen within this simulation that I call the world stage. And so it doesn't really matter if it's happening in cyberspace or outer space. It's the same thing. Pentagon leaders are touring U.S. bases this week while asking the Biden administration to draft the 2023 budget. The Department of Defense hopes to move the budget dollars towards a military that can deter Russia and China. I like how they don't keep their secret plan secret, they just publish it. They don't even bother, no subtlety here. It's like if Russia and China shoots down the DirecTV satellite, it's on. says satellites are vital to military communications, global positioning, navigation, and training systems that are needed in the event of a war. The 10-day long space war game attempts to simulate our cutting edge capabilities in space. Okay, so again, we're talking about space wars and simulations. It's like, why can't they use this 10-day period to make friends? No, they're arming up. And this alone should explain why the flat earthers are so reviled. And I'm not calling myself one, I'm just saying the people who ask these questions, who stray this far from the mainstream, well, you're not going to accept the stories that are setting the stage for the next war. It's like if you didn't believe in Islamic terrorism before 2001, if you were ready to auto hoax the whole thing, it would have been very problematic. We're joined by X22, Go Find the Others, OG Fepe, Obreak, Adam Lanza's here. Finally catching alive at the beginning. I'll make sure to tweet your David Hogg account on Twitter. JT33, Frank Mirror, Thirst for Truth. And I have a premiere from last night that's going to play, but every morning I try to catch up on things, and so I'm kind of merging my morning routine with Free Earth Radio. And so the Flat Earth Report podcast will be live streamed. And if you missed it, if you're not up, no big deal. I will be rebroadcasting this later as well. Just go to theflatearthreport.com. Again, ferlive.com or Free Earth Radio is another network that we're now affiliated with. They carried Mad Mike Hughes's show WTF Radio. That's how I met them. Actually, I met Russell DeBird and Rick Lotek and a few other guys from this place. So I'll have them call in at some point. Maybe I can get Rick or Russ to Skype in. I'll try to get them to do it tomorrow. I'll put a note here. Skype Russ or Rick. That way you can get to know the people there at Free Earth Radio. Just another partner that we have. We've done a lot of lateral expansion. Censorship's not a thing. It's just a joke at this point for Infinite Plane Radio. I think we were 111 in Apple Podcasts chart for South Africa. So, the genie's out of the bottle. The toothpaste is out of the tube. They can't really fix it. I think we broke the matrix in 2017 with the Research Flat Earth billboard campaign. And Research Flat Earth is still, I think, the most popular and I think the most widespread flat earth meme out there. Because it's not saying the earth is flat, it's saying research it. It's saying there's a question to be asked. Space wars, COVID wars, and a missing tiger in Houston. Top stories of 2021. Okay, so this is again top stories of 2021. Space wars and COVID wars coming together. Now, the COVID wars it's referring to isn't really the war against the virus. It's the vaxxed versus the unvaxxed, the purebloods versus the goobloods, the true believers in the MSM church versus its Protestants, the anti-vaxxers, and each thinks that the other's going to die from the other's choice of medicine it's so perfectly split that I'm surprised that people don't see it. But this is how it works. So it's like if you're a pureblood, you think, well, if you get goo-blooded, you're going to die, or it's going to take you over because you're born pure. You're born saved. God made you perfect. But then, if you're an MSM believing atheist, you think, no, man has to save man. We're not born perfect. We're born impure. So they get the augmentation thinking that the goo blood is actually what makes them better than what they were born with. So one believes in salvation by man and by, I guess you would say, sacrament. And the others believe in, well, you're born saved. And there's a war right there. Now, space wars, as I've discussed, is space communism versus space capitalism, as typified by Bezos, Branson, and Musk, who are trying to figure out how to make themselves even richer on Earth. You have the billionaire space race that happened in 2021. Multiple space races. The billionaire space race was a race to see which one of these space popes would poke their heads into the heavens first, and it was Bezos with his cowboy hat. And he's not even a cowboy. Bezos probably cannot ride a horse. However, I think the cowboy hat was symbolic of the Wild West, the new frontier, being outer space now, and also space cowboys, unregulated, unmitigated capitalists going up there to bring down trillions of dollars in wealth by mining asteroids and comets, which happen to be one of the subplots of this movie. Don't Look Up. This idea of like mining asteroids for money, mining a comet, even if it's on its way to come kill us. So the space cowboy Bezos also brought William Shatner into the fold. Shatner is now one of the few people who've actually been up in space, and you associate Shatner with what? Star Trek, the new frontier. So you have these competing visions. The new frontier of outer space as the heavens to be plundered for the enrichment of the earth, but then the space communists don't like that. They don't like the idea of a few billionaires buying their way into the heavens, enriching themselves, and shifting the balance of power on the earth. Because what it would do is it would make, well, first of all, it would accelerate global warming, but it would encourage people to become billionaires, and billionaires aren't sustainable. So then you have the image of Bezos on his $500 million mega yacht, having a party with all his friends, no social, right there on the deck in front of everybody, riding around, drinking wine, making out, just showing us that they don't care, that the world is a sinking Titanic. And this is Don't Look Up, the movie Don't Look Up. This is the whole theme. The earth is a sinking Titanic. And here you have the richest man on earth who's poked his head into the heavens, living in a very unsustainable way. We can't all live like Bezos. And that's sort of the contrast that we've been presented with. The alternative, or rather the other side, would be the communists' way forward. Well, communism equals environmentalism, equals green and sustainable. Has nothing to do with Marx, Karl Marx. Most communists don't even read the Communist Manifesto, and most of those platforms have already been achieved. One of the platforms was the abolition of religion. And it's not that they're atheists, it's that the state becomes the religion for the communists. And they achieved that in 2020, in my opinion, because they've imposed a new religion that cuckolded all the other religions and gods. COVID Akbar. And that is really the new God. Well, it's as I described it in this new paradigm, God is the globe. God is the earth itself, an angry God that might flood the world if you don't mitigate your pollution. That's the God that they're all flaunting here. But they've introduced the devil because it's a devil that atheists will believe in, and it will modify their behavior, and that's COVID. But you wouldn't be wrong if you said that they were COVID worshippers more than globe worshippers because they love cheering on the deaths of their enemies. Oh, look, another flat earther died of COVID. COVID Akbar. They all chant, they all get super excited because it vindicates them, it validates their science. You went against their science, their doctrines. You conspiracy theorist heretic. Take that. Okay, so we're talking about the new religion. And now, okay, now Space Wars. This is the whole thing. With the communists, it's all about green and lockdowns. So even before COVID lockdowns, you had Bezos talking about locking down the world, freezing civilization, choosing a civilization of stasis on the earth to cease the polluting. He wants to move all of our polluting industry into outer space. And the idea here is we need to lock down because of the climate. So they were talking lockdowns before COVID. So COVID was used to fast track the green agenda, which is the communist agenda. So you can kind of see the picture here. The outer space agenda is synonymous with environmentalism and global warming, or solving it. That's why everyone who goes to space looks back and they say, man, the earth is screwed. It's so fragile. We need to change our ways. The overview effect, where they go up so high, they get God's eyes view, and they're able to say, hey, look, if we don't change it, the world's going to run into an iceberg, like the Titanic. So they come back down with the need to change it. That's why William Shatner came down from space and said, we're headed towards a catastrophic event. Now, he didn't specify which. Let me catch up on some comments. Again, we'll be doing this every morning, and then after this, I'm gonna send everyone over to Crater Earth USA on Dark Matter Radio. Go Find the Other says, I'm globophobic. Lando Rock says, you would think we can handle our space problems diplomatically at this point in history. Well, that's the whole thing. It's a schism that cannot be rectified because you can't have space communism and space capitalism. We have to decide collectively how we're going to move forward. And this is the theme of every single movie that you see with outer space. It's showing you kind of a cautionary tale. If we go on this path, this will happen. If we take this other path, this will happen. So, for example, the Mars documentary slash TV show on Netflix, I mean, they kind of mix the two. Sometimes it's real, sometimes it's fiction, and then it's cameos with people who are real, but they're playing fictional roles, but they're talking about real events. It was called Mars, and it was on Netflix, and I watched it in its entirety because I do this. I do this so you don't have to. It's a television series. It's opposition research. It's homework, but it's 100% necessary. So this was a National Geographic's Mars series on Netflix, November 2020, and it was contrasting two different approaches to how we're going to colonize Mars. One of them was we go up there as scientists, we respect it, we look for life, and we try not to disrupt the environment. And then the other group goes up there from like Texas, and they want to drill for oil. So one group finds life, and it's run by women who are, cis women, female scientists. The guys from Texas who go to drill for oil on Mars are men, cowboys, space cowboys. And what happens at the end is you have two different competing bases. One is there for science, one is there for money. And the one that is there for science, they find life, while the ones that are there for money actually cause a Mars quake. They're drilling an earthquake, Mars quake, and pretty much endangers everybody. Well, then, contrast that with the main storyline behind Don't Look Up, and it's the scientists are going to save humanity. There's an incoming iceberg from space. But the capitalists say, no, we can mine that thing, make more cell phones out of it. We can get the minerals. So by trying to mine the thing, they end up precipitating our collective destruction. So again, the moneyed interests kill us all. Joined by P. Trippa, says, good afternoon from Boston. Eric of Bear, if the globe is the god and God is a ball, the god is ball. No wonder the Kabbalists run it. Yeah, I've made that connection before, and you're perfectly right about that. It's ball worship. The god of the earth is Baal. And then you have the Baal earth, which is, I guess, validated by the space travelers who get in the rocket, which is an obelisk. Obelisk is shaft of Baal. So it's quite literally an idol to the earth god that they're riding into space so they can look down and worship the earth, stare at the face of their god. So I call them Baal worshippers all the time. Baal earth. I think about the ball games and the obsession with sports, but just the words and the word magic. It's all very telling if you ask me. And then you have the green fields. I mean, what better way to venerate the earth god? And so when I see these, there's something we can get into with this whole topic, but yes, it's all earth worship. But it's also worship of, well, everything. It's not as simple as they only worship this earth god who's patriarchal with his dung idol obelisk. No, because they also worship the goddess of the sky, Isis. And they worship her temple, or at the temple of the ISS. And that's the real meaning behind it. Earth god, sky goddess, and their daily conjugal visit, or nightly rather, after the sun dies, is when they consummate, they have their newborn, Horus, the next morning to defeat the darkness for another day. Alright, let's see what we have here. Joined by Gubble, Lieutenant Adam Bomb. All right, look, I'm going to go ahead and continue. We're talking about space wars, COVID wars, and it's all tied together. In fact, right after COVID, you had many people, like many articles from RT, in fact, were covering this, how it was speeding up the green agenda. They said COVID-19 is doing Greta's work. They said this plague is cleaning our skies, it's cleaning up the air, it's actually saving lives. More lives will be saved from clean air than will have been lost to the virus, therefore, more or less justifying a daily plague for the sake of the planet. And it doesn't cull as many of the human herd. Russian space wars. Look, rocket launch fails, sends 20 tons hurtling to the Earth. Russia's biggest space war rocket. I hadn't heard of this thing as as such as a space war rocket. I heard it had a dummy payload. So it's Angara A5. They try to send this heavy carrier rocket into space. They didn't have enough power to send it all the way up to its 22,000-mile orbit. Although only a mock-up satellite, it was crucial to Russia as new military weapons delivery systems. Look, this is interesting here. Like someone had brought up, why aren't they just making friends? They're friends in the ISS. Speaking of the space station, Russia, China, America, they're all hanging out up there. And so it's kind of interesting that they're also arming up like this. Footage shows the unmanned launch on Monday, marking a new stage in Moscow's space war ambitions. The rocket is meant to take advanced spy and weapons navigation satellites into orbit, and it may be used in moon missions. It says there are fears that this 20-ton payload will hurtle back to the Earth. Okay, so it says if left in low orbit, it's likely to crash down in a few weeks, according to Moscow. It's kind of interesting what they call it here. It says if left, the pretend satellite, because it's a dummy. It says that malfunctioned. Does anybody here believe this? I mean, this is meta fake. I mean, it's not just fake. It's not just fake news. It's not just a simulation, but it's fake in a few ways. You know, it's like, wait, they're creating this entire thing from start to finish. So if they publish it, if they say this is what's happening, they want you to believe it. So they want you to believe that this is an accident. It says this failure could be considered the first full-fledged accident at Roscosmos in the past 3 years. If it had a real payload, it would have been lost. Now, this is supposed to land tomorrow. So tomorrow, 1/6, happy anniversary to all my insurrectionists, which basically means anybody who doesn't believe the mainstream news. All the conspiracists, dangerous misinformation spreaders. Tomorrow, on that day, 1/6, which the left holds that 1/6 was a new 9/11. So it's kind of interesting to me that Russia is going to drop a piece of space junk on us on a date that's considered to be a very 9/11-y date. Let's see, let's continue through the comments. Linda Curtis says, ask Alex Jones's wife about 5-pound balls. Yeah, she threw a 5-pound ball at his head and hit him over the head with shampoo, a shampoo bottle. 20 times, reportedly. She's in jail. All right, let's see here. Don't Look Up, Hollywood's primer on climate denial. See? The movie's about a comet hitting the Earth, but I told you early on, when I said this back in February, when they put the trailer out, I said with Leo DiCaprio's face on it, this is going to be some kind of climate change propaganda. And sure enough, now it's come out. This movie that you watched about this dangerous scenario, if we don't listen to the scientists, is actually about environmentalism. Not a coincidence you have Jennifer Lawrence from the Hunger Games as the co-star, because she's the face of the reset, one of the reset faces in the Hunger Games. Every disaster movie seems to open up with the scientist being ignored. This is from theconversation.com. Don't Look Up is no exception. In fact, people have been flat out denying science, and that is the point. Flat out, right? Because if you're not a globe believer, you're not going to believe in the 33-year-old hoax global warming. And yeah, global warming turned 33, I think, in June. I'm joined here by Pippi Langstruff. Good to see you here. Go, everyone, share the stream. I'm going to start doing the text message alerts and all that stuff, but you can just rely on this. Same time every morning, we will be here, perusing the headlines, catching up on the previous night, and then I'll be sending everyone over to Crater Earth USA here in about 20. And then after that, I have a replay of last night's live stream 5G head explosions. Did any of you see those videos of the 5G towers causing people's heads to explode? According to Snopes, that's not what happened. Joined by Connor G from Ireland. Good to see you. Okay, so back to this. Leonardo DiCaprio, who is a huge environmentalist, he idolizes Al Gore and the Unabomber, probably. And he's friends with Greta Thunberg, who is a pen pal to the Unabomber, reportedly. So anyway, that's something in itself. We'll get into that. But the fact that Leonardo DiCaprio is friends with Greta Thunberg, happy birthday, Greta Thunberg, 2 days ago, by the way. She and Kyle turned 19. Two of the most famous child crisis actors. Same birthday. Opposite sides of the political spectrum. No coincidences here. So Leonardo DiCaprio, friends with Greta, major environmentalist, has his own environmentalist agency trying to save the world. Well, he's in a movie about a comet about to hit the Earth after his role as the face of the Titanic. So I'm suggesting here there's a deeper meaning. So they use these actors because they carry weight from their previous roles. So what we have here is Leonardo and Jennifer play astronomers who make a literally earth-shattering discovery and try to persuade the president to take action to save humanity. The movie is an allegory for climate change, showing how those with the power to do something willfully avoid taking action, and how those with vested interests can mislead the public. But it also reflects science denial more broadly, including what we've seen with COVID-19. So this is another area where this ties into the real world, because in 2019 we had the comet C19 preceding COVID-19. Some scientists on the fringe speculated that the dust from the comet brought us COVID-19 because it had broken up in the sky. The movie Don't Look Up starts off with a green comet in the sky. It breaks up, precipitating the destruction of the world. And the comet C19 was actually called Atlas, which has this interesting Atlas Shrugged connection. Atlas Shrugged, a book about a global shutdown of the economy of the world, basically a reset. John Galt in the book presses the reset button on the Earth. So anyway, this is an allegory for climate change. I mean, what isn't? Everything on Netflix has prepared us for Skyfall, for objects falling from the sky, asteroids, comets, space wars. Space Force is doing the drills, as I just said. And now this. And by the way, on New Year's Eve in Pittsburgh, some kind of media or something caused a pretty large sonic boom. So get ready. I mean, sonic booms, they can make those at any time, but they can just say it's coming from space. Okay, anyway, let's move on from this. Oh, look at these myths though. This is where it ties into COVID. Myth 4. The economy is more important than anything, including impending crises predicted by science. So you had this false debate over whether or not we should shut things down because of the virus. And the scientists said yes. The people who had businesses, the capitalists said no. We should not. We shouldn't shut down the economy. Money's more important. So they've been trying to create this question. They put this question out there that we all have to confront. What's more important? Money or the earth? It says, viruses are oblivious to global affiliation, and so is the changing climate. Rising global temperatures, worsening storms, sea levels rising will affect everyone in harm's way, regardless of the person's social group. And this is something else that the climate scientists will say. They will say, and I put that in scare quotes, climate scientists, because they're conspiracy theorists. They really are. But they will say that most of the pollution is coming from America, and therefore it's disproportionate. Americans are we're like the pariahs. We're the ones who are, I think, for the most part, in denial of this, mostly because of Trump. But they will say that the rich nations are the ones who are benefiting from the exploitation of the earth, and the poor nations are disproportionately affected. That climate change affects the poor. Therefore, climate change is racist. And they've made this argument. So then you could argue that, because they already have, that capitalism is structurally racist. The West is racist. It's this Western chauvinism. So I can't breathe, as you may have noticed, has been this reoccurring meme they've put out there since 2020. And it's not just about oppression. Now I can't breathe. It's about we can't breathe because there's no more air. And every other Netflix film starts out with that premise. The 100, the one where the space station falls, and it's about a post-apocalyptic world, and they're sending 100 of the youth down to repopulate. Well, they have to send them down because they can't breathe, because there's not enough air for everybody on the ship. Now, I mentioned this many times. I can't breathe is a perfect anagram for a better China, which, in my opinion, makes perfect sense, considering how we're actually looking at more or less a communist revolution. Jenna says, I heard the sonic boom hiking last summer on Rhode Island. Oh, you heard one? Yeah, we have them here. We used to have quite a bit by this air base, this Air Force base. And I'm thinking that it will be very easy for them to fake space junk Armageddon, satellites being shot down. Very easy to do. And then you just point people at CGI, because we have a very augmented reality here. It's augmented virtual reality. And what they've done is they've acclimated the public to accept the screen, the TV screen, and all of its experts as their sixth sense. So you got your five senses, but you have another sense that's far more dominant, and it's your perception of the metaverse that trumps everything else. The screen is like another sensory apparatus. And that's ultimately what the flat earthers have been about this whole time. Can we take for granted the evidence as presented? Is the TV evidence? Are these experts on the TV to be considered infallible, objective observers? Are they the voice of science? Is it unscientific to question them? All right, so same time tomorrow. We will be back tonight for open phones. If you've missed anything, just catch it on the replay. Make sure you subscribe. And again, you can catch us every morning. We are on Free Earth Radio. So I'm going to put a link in the chat to make sure you can find this. It's ferlive.com. And over at Free Earth Radio, there is a chat room. So those of you in the chat there, I am monitoring that as well as our other think tanks around here. So I'm putting that in the chat. Again, I want to say thanks to Free Earth Radio for carrying us in the mornings. Again, this is the Flat Earth Report for January 5th, 2022, keeping everybody abreast of the major big league fake science psyops of the day, and Space Wars is the next one. A heads up, there is a piece of Russian space junk that's going to be hitting in the next 24 hours. This is Airship, Chief Crow and the Flat Earthworms, his latest. Alright, everyone, that's Chief Crow, Cult. And yes, you're in a cult if you believe any of the mainstream media narratives that shape the dominant worldview. The world cult, the world church, the world pulpit being your used to be TV screen, but now it's the black screen you hold in your hand. We live in Black Mirror world, which is a theme I wanted to touch upon tonight. And if you haven't seen Black Mirror, I advise starting with episode 2. But it's definitely worth watching if you want to have some insight as to, well, not just where things are going, but how we got here, where we might actually be. Let me go ahead and go through comments before we go much further here. By the way, we were kicked off YouTube. We were kicked off YouTube. Text message notifications just went out. So thank you for joining us in DLive if you're on chat or possibly Twitch. But no, I think we just lost channel number 117. Today is November the 15th, 2021. Not surprised, not surprised. There's an approach I've noticed that the sensors over there, what do you want to call them? The snowflake protectors. I mean, you have a group of snowflakes who have an inordinate amount of power to censor those who say things that they find offensive. And that's problematic for a lot of reasons, not the least of which, you don't have to subject yourself to the stuff that offends you. And the idea that you're going to have it censored because it offends you is actually kind of fascist. It's like, well, don't partake. If you don't like the way a certain flavor tastes, you don't have to eat it. You don't have to take it off the shelves. But no, they're working towards a one-size-fits-all world, and unfortunately, people are going along with it lockstep. And so a whole bunch of snowflakes who may not even exist are used as a basis to keep this channel consistently censored. And one of the things they've done is they've targeted any of our channels that are monetized because they know that it costs money to make something more than a hobby. And we do have ambition here. We have plans. We have an infinite plan. But none of their feeble attempts at censoring or blocking us have had any effect. I would say that out of all the channels spreading dangerous misinformation, we are probably one of the most successful at advancing or at least promulgating and popularizing some of the most disruptive memes out there. COVID 1984 started here. Mask of the Beast started here. Even the flat earth topic broke out of the YouTube echo chambers because of the crowd-funded billboard that we put up right outside of an airport. So, 117, 120, doesn't matter how many channels they take out. It doesn't really stop what we're doing. What I won't do, though, is I won't exit. I'm not going to leave their field. I'm not going to leave the YouTube platform altogether like many do. A lot of channels, a lot of YouTubers they go to various obscure platforms, and then those platforms get tanked, and then they're lost. So we refuse to cede any territory. And not that I have to explain myself, but I'll go ahead and get into this. One of the Mendoozled, that is one of the Mandela affected, one of the gurus, one of the promulgators of the Mandela effect, one of the top Mandela effect pushers, accused me of being Mandela affected. But it was part of a video where he was chastising me for selling masks. And I just wanted to bring that up really quick. Not that I have to explain why I would sell them, but this was used to suggest that I'm somehow like a bad actor because I'm selling masks. Well, first, I'm not even selling them. We do advertise them. I do create them and put them on my site, but it's really about maintaining a position in the cultural space. We want to make sure our memes are everywhere and that we have an answer, a retort, a reply to every advance of Big Brother. Something, that's the whole idea. I'm not advocating, mask your kids, mask your dog, or whatever. And then the titles or the theme on the mask, usually the designs were somewhat ironic just to make a point, like a sheep's mouth or some sixes. So not hard to understand why we would do it. But that's the same mentality behind staying on YouTube. I don't believe we should leave just because we've been kicked out. It's just try to stay that much harder. But however, at the same time, building our own platform is obviously the future. Maxwell Cooper says Black Mirror Men Against Fire episode nailed how the blue-pilled view the unvaxxed. Oh, yes. In that episode, you had soldiers with some kind of a visor that caused them to see their enemies as uh, kind of what, insects or something. It was sort of a, was it a neural implant? Okay, so let us continue. Maxwell Cooper says, I bought one of those Joker masks. Oh, yeah, I started selling Joker masks right when this thing started because we analyzed the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix. The name Phoenix, very significant. And of course, the Batman series has made use of a stylized version of the Phoenix made out of a bat. Imagine that, a bat and a phoenix. What's the connection? Well, the phoenix is a symbol of the reset. Burn down, build back better. What burnt down our system? An underheated bowl of bat soup. It all goes back to the bat. But the Joker movie, starring Joaquin Phoenix, had a revolution started at the end, where everyone puts on a clown mask. And I look at the Joker as sort of a mercurial character. He's a very interesting world stager, this Joaquin Phoenix, on and off the stage. But in this particular role, they were foreshadowing a masked, uh, I wouldn't call it an insurrection, but the mobs, the riots, the burning of the police precincts. I don't know what you would call that. I mean, an insurrection today is just defined as basically a bad performance art, lazily strolling around, guided tour around the Capitol, dressed up like cavemen. But no, what we saw in the summer of 2020 looked like it was right out of the Joker movie. And so I started selling Joker masks because I was saying, hey, in the movie, they were pointing out that the emblem of the revolution is the mask, whether you're Antifa or you're wearing the medical mask, that the medical mask is the Joker mask. And that as long as you're wearing it as a believer, you're actually participating in the burning down stage of the reset. And that was the main point. I mean, we all know that they'll penalize you for saying that it's not a life-saving medical device, that somehow isn't a biohazardous piece of waste that you need to throw in a red bin. I mean, this thing is so deadly, they would say it's communicable, it goes on your phone for 30 days, it can go on money. But your mask, you don't have to put it in a biohazard container. Give me a break. You know how they have in parks, they have little posts where you can get a little box with bags to clean up after your dog? We should have those everywhere. Dispose of your masks properly. I mean, you clean up after your dog and you're going to leave a mask on the ground that supposedly is so contagious that you could shut down the world if one person gets within 6 feet of it. By the way, there was a ton of predictive programming in the Batman movies pointing at the pandemic. In fact, in Dark Knight Rises, there's a scene with a guy without a mask. The Robin-like character says, I don't need to wear a mask, I'm not afraid. And Batman says, you don't wear a mask to protect yourself. You wear the mask to protect those you love. Spoken right out of 2013, but it came out of 2020. And then he throws a grenade that happens to look like a COVID, and it blows up in a mushroom cloud. And if you remember 2020, the anniversary of Hiroshima Nagasaki, we had 13 or more different mushroom cloud blasts and fires around the world that week. Inexplicable. I mean, if you remember, let me go ahead and bring that up. It started in Beirut. You had the twin explosions, 2020. August 4th, the city of Beirut was rocked by an enormous blast, but following this, there were a number of other blasts. And I don't think it's coincidental. I think these were all timed and coordinated events given various explanations, but part of a synchronized ritual. Side topic. But I want to go ahead and get through a list of the things we're going to discuss tonight before I get much further, and I'll go through my newsletter here as well. So topics tonight, I did want to talk about Tom Cruise and his face, something really weird about his face. And then we'll talk about Kenosha. I believe riots start tomorrow. Another interesting thing. Let's go ahead and start with Tom Cruise's face. This is a real life follows art moment. And last week I spoke with Human Vibration, and if you haven't heard that, just go to darkmatter.radio if you want to hear it on the podcast. And we were talking about the concept of templates, as she describes it. You know, I use a phrase to describe the big picture analysis of the media and the story that guides the big story, or rather the script that guides the major events on the world stage. I describe it as a meta script because you have to look at the news, the entertainment. You have to look at what's being programmed into our mass collective subconscious minds before you can see the big picture. And here's just an interesting coincidence. So Tom Cruise has been sighted again, and his face is a little deflated. If you remember a few weeks ago, and I'll put this on your face on the screen so you can see it. Look at Tom's face at the Giants game, and if you recall, his cheeks were a little puffy. He looked like a chipmunk. I mean, it looked like, to me, I thought this was a body double, or there's some kind of ruse going on. Maybe they're trying, I don't know what's going on. But that face, okay, so now this shows up just today. His face looks very deflated. It's the opposite of what it was at the Giants game. So I don't know what's going on with Tom Cruise's face. But I did want to point this out. The way his face looks right now, with the crease from the corner of his lip all the way down his chin to his neck, looks exactly like his character in Vanilla Sky. Vanilla Sky is being released again, its 20th anniversary version, this week. So, in the movie Vanilla Sky, it's all about Tom Cruise falling from the sky, jumping off a building after exiting a simulation. I don't want to give you too many spoilers, but there were a ton of 9/11 references in this movie that came out just after 9/11, and there were many references to coronavirus and the lockdowns, which happened 19 years after the movie. But now, this is what I wanted to point out. So we're looking at Tom Cruise and his face and how it looks like a repeat from that movie. Moreover, in the movie he falls, or he's a jumper. So here's what stood out to me today. In the photography on this article, they show Tom Cruise dressed in a quote, black knit jumper. And if you look at his position, arms out, one leg back, it could be a coincidence. But if you look at the image of the hanged man and the way that his leg, one of his knees is bent, and you look at the 9/11 jumper, which, by the way, you know, the famous image of the falling man from 9/11, this is all very intriguing when you get into the weird synchronicities here. Here you have the falling man, a photograph taken by AP photographer Richard Drew on September the 11th. Very famous image. Anyway, this is the same guy that photographed RFK when he was shot by Saran in 1968. Same photographer, just happened to be in the right place at the right time to shoot the falling man. So in the movie Vanilla Sky, which has a lot of 9/11 tie-ins, and Tom Cruise is a 9/11 jumper for all intents and purposes in that movie, that movie's being re-released this week, and he's wearing a jumper. And he looks just like that character. So anyway, interesting bit of, I don't know what you'd call this, other than I happen to think it might be something like predictive programming. And we'll get into this because I've been talking for like the last year and a half about how this is the year the space station goes down. And that's probably the other story we really need to touch on now is, okay, so a few days ago, the space station had to dodge a piece of Chinese space junk. And I said it's going to be taken down by Russia and China. They're going to shoot it down and dominate space because the capitalists, people like Bezos and Branson and Musk, are nothing but bad news for the world if they start bringing resources from space, becoming trillionaires, and then exacerbating climate change by bringing more money and wealth to a world that is already suffering from being overexploited. So they see capitalism as toxic. That's part of the problem. In fact, I can't breathe is one of the phrases that in one of the forced memes of 2020, they brought it back this year at the Astro World. I can't breathe. That's what the victims were saying. Well, they've also applied I can't breathe to the climate justice struggle. No coincidences here. So the communists look at the capitalists, America, as a pariah because we're responsible, supposedly, for most of the climate change, which is a hoax, but, you know, say that while you can before it's labeled hate speech. Climate change is just how they reintroduced the flood myth and the wrathful God for the atheists. You know how the atheists didn't believe in sin until he brought them a virus? It's just a new way to control them. Yeah, that's what global warming is. But anyway, assuming it to be true or believing it to be true, America's a problem. And if we go to space, we're going to make everything worse because we're not going to space as communists. And space communism is where it's going. So I don't think it's a coincidence that China happens to put America's role in outer space, our dominant position, or I mean, we're all sharing space up there, but if they take down our space station, that leaves China's. And the Russians were already talking of just leaving their station behind and going to China's. Just let's leave America, leave the ISS, and go work with our friends, our comrades. So look at this here. Secretary Blinken says, we condemn Russia's reckless creating of space debris. We condemn Russia's reckless test of a direct descent anti satellite missile against its own satellite that created space debris that risked astronauts' lives, the integrity of the ISS, and the interests of all nations. So here you have another example of what you even have is like plausible deniability. Like, for example, was it a bowl of bat soup that shut down the world? Or was it China leaking something? Well, it depends on which side of the fence you stand on politically, what you're going to believe. Far right thinks China leaked it. However, they have plausible deniability. Oh no, it came from a wet food market. Same thing with the space junk. Last year, there's a piece of Chinese space junk. It was actually from, I believe it was a booster. It was from the rocket launch where they sent the first module from their space station up. And it's kind of an FU, I think. They let that piece just go into orbit wildly, and it could have landed anywhere. It landed in the Indian Ocean, minutes before Elon Musk took the stage at SNL. But back then, it was, did China intentionally endanger us all? Or was it something where it was just reckless and it put us all in danger? Does it make a difference? Is what some were asking. But my thinking is, it was a test. Just like this, I think what we're looking at here is Russia and China have complete plausible deniability if they take down our space station. And I've been saying this for some time, that this is what's going to happen. And it's all been predicted. So here we are, 42 years since Skylab fell. Space station already has cracks, fissures, internal, uh, I would say, conflicts between the cosmonauts and the Americans. Maybe it stems from the fact that the Russians drink water and the Americans drink recycled cosmonaut urine. It's been that way the whole time. You can look it up. I think that says something about the relationship. But my point is, they had a fire alarm in the thing. They have cracks in it, literal cracks. There was a hole drilled in the thing. So every indication. Then, of course, you have the Russian booster a few months ago that flipped the space station 540 degrees. Was that an accident? That the thrusters just went off and flipped the space station over? I don't think so. So then again, just the other day, they dodge a piece of Chinese space junk, and now Russia puts them in the path of orbital debris. I'm looking at comments here because, people all believe this to be real, not some war game. And I think that this is all definitely right on schedule. I'll be following this along closely. I hope they don't bring it down before Tom Cruise gets up there to film his movie. Garrett7 says FEMA camps coming soon. Where have you been? The FEMA camps are already here, and you already are living in one. If you're sitting in front of a Netflix or a Black Mirror, if you're believing the news, if you're at home and you're taking care of yourself and you're getting yourself through all of the necessary hoops they want you to jump through, yeah, you are in a FEMA camp. They don't need you to be centralized in a location where they have to feed you and take care of you. No, this is a decentralized FEMA camp, and you'll be there for the rest of your life. So get comfortable. And what they're doing now is they're getting you used to not leaving. Oh, you can't leave because you'll spread COVID. Oh, you can't leave because your carbon footprint. Mother Earth can't take it. You see where they're going? Maxwell Cooper says, they wanted an incel white supremacist to shoot up a theater so bad. I saw that there was another shooting at a theater, I believe in Aurora, which is another Batman reference. That's really when the Batman movie merged with reality. It was the guy, the Joker shooter, at the Batman movie theater in Aurora. And by the way, just to give you an idea of how long they've been suppressing this channel, and this is probably why. So after the event in Aurora, they set up a shrine for the victims, and it's right near the courthouse, and it's made up of, I believe, here we go. It's made up of a certain number of, I believe, swans. But there was, of course, it was James Holmes, who may have had some connections, or his dad may have had connections to Adam Lanza. So they have this shrine set up to the victims right out by the courthouse. And I remember when they set it up, I drove by, I was in the area, and I thought, I'm going to go do a live stream from the site of this shrine that they set up. And I see people walking around it, and I think, okay, well, there's obviously a lot of people here. It seems kind of real. It can't all be crisis actors. So I go down to investigate, and I look to see if anyone is actually paying attention to the shrine set up for the victims of the Aurora shooting. Well, turns out that no one was really looking at it. They were all looking at their phones because they were hunting a Pokemon. So, in other words, there was a Pokemon event at the courthouse at the same time that the shrine was opening up. So, anybody driving by the courthouse would look out there and they would see all kinds of people. This is the memorial, Essentiate, the 720 memorial dedicated to the 13 killed and 70 wounded on July 20th, 2012. Yeah, so I went to this it was just an all-day event where it was like the opening for this thing, and there was a Pokemon on the loose. And so nobody was there for the memorial. They were there for the Pokemon. I was live streaming the event, and during my live stream, my YouTube channel was cut down. So I have a feeling that we've been monitored very closely for some time, probably because of our opinions and the things we talk about. All right, I'm going through some comments. Salty Siren says Tom looks like he's melting. Yeah, he does. And in the movie Vanilla Sky, it's all about his face, and there's a few different storylines along with Vanilla Sky. I happen to think it's a follow-up to Eyes Wide Shut. So Eyes Wide Shut, Stanley Kubrick, his last film, followed by a movie called, well, same actor, Tom Cruise. I think there's a continuity here. But Vanilla Sky's original name was Open Your Eyes. So I think Eyes Wide Shut and Open Your Eyes has a contiguous plot, which we can talk about. And both of these movies have a subtext that connects to the major psyops of our day. I mean, Stanley Kubrick's films are really worth looking at for his not only Apollo 11 references, but his 9/11 references and his COVID references, and references to Space Wars, which we haven't even seen yet. Linda Curtis says Tom Cruise is going to be an ISS jumper. Right. Well, interestingly enough, Tom Cruise was doing a stunt where he jumped from a plane with a parachute and landed in a field of cows. And the cows were all knocked out, knocked unconscious, stunned by the drone scrambling noisemakers they had. They have these devices that scramble drones, and it caused the cows to collapse. So Tom Cruise comes down from the sky, and these cows are passed out. But that was the day that the space station had a fire alarm going off. And I think it's all foreshadowing, and I wouldn't be surprised. By the way, if you get into the symbolism ISS, I is 9, S is 19, or 1 plus 0, 1, you could derive 911 from that. And I point this out, I've pointed this out before, because it's all given away in the architecture. It's another level of the predictive programming. As you would all know if you've looked into the predictive programming with 9/11, the image of the towers was already pretty much well cemented in your mind, and this was something that was planted years in advance. We were conditioned for it, just as we are being conditioned for the coming alien invasion. Whether you think it sounds ludicrous or not, we're just reading their script. But one of the things I point out when I look at the space station, and by the way, here are some headlines. A Russian anti-satellite missile puts the ISS in peril. Russia blows up a satellite, creates a dangerous debris cloud in space. Space debris forces the astronauts to take shelter in a return ship. So they're almost ready to abandon ship right now. And to me, this is part of the Tower of Babel falling. And I talked about this when Jeff Bezos went to space on 7/20/2021, anniversary of the moon landing, Apollo 11. He actually launched on 9/11,
Imagine that, 9/11, Apollo 11. Seems like a couple of Kubrick shout-outs. My point being, richest man in the world goes to space, pokes his head in the heavens, in the capsule, which is the capstone. There's a lot of symbolism in that particular individual, in Jeff Bezos, and his role here, but for now I want to keep this focused on this. Look at the space station's solar panels. I think they look conspicuously like the Twin Towers, depending on the angle, and oftentimes I believe they're represented to give us a visual clue. And what's more, and I can point to a few other things here, but in Space Odyssey, in 2001 Space Odyssey, the space station has two big cylinders. And when the space plane approaches the space station, it happens to look like Flight 175 approaching the Twin Towers. It's almost like Stanley Kubrick is the same director of both 2001 A Space Odyssey and 9/11. And if you're looking at the screen here, you can see the space plane. Ludicrous concept, or is it? Because on 7/11, which was the 42nd anniversary of Skylab falling, Richard Branson took his space plane up, and his space plane is brought up into space by the White Knight 2, like almost like what you see here on Space Odyssey. You see a space plane approaching two towers. Sort of a repeated motif here, but again, plane approaching Twin Towers, very similar. And this is just one of at least a dozen different scenes that align so closely that it's a dead giveaway, if you ask me. In fact, I was watching John LeBon this morning. If you go to johnlebon.com, I'll put a link in the chat. I highly recommend it. Great think tank. But he was live on YouTube today and he was going over the Millennium Hotel at Ground Zero, which is designed off of the 2001 monolith. So here you have another Kubrick reference at Ground Zero, which is backed up by a couple scenes from another one of his movies, The Shining, where Danny's speeding down a hallway towards the twins on his bike. The original, they weren't twins. Kubrick added that. He drives past them, they're hacked up in the middle, there's a fireman's axe on the ground. The scene looks 9/11-y. Next scene, Danny's throwing darts. The twins approach, and next to the twins is a Bell phone booth. Well, at Ground Zero, next to the Twin Towers, you had the Bell telephone tower. So you have a number of elements here connecting these. And I'm just suggesting it's worth pointing out that Kubrick's work should be considered as we're looking at what's going to come, and also Kubrick's connection to Tom Cruise. I mean, what are the odds that the guy who's number one suspect for being the mind behind Apollo 11, I mean, I'm sure it's not just him, but the architect of that particular psyop, what are the odds that his final film, and by all indications he faked his death, but we'll leave that his final film involves Tom Cruise, who of course was going to film the first movie in space, but the Russians beat him. It's like interesting connection there. I'm going to continue though. User offline says the debris is a KGB dead drop. Yep. Garrett7 says DART blowing up an asteroid. DART is also a system that warns against tsunami. Yes, they have their DART system for shooting asteroids out of the sky, and I've thought, well, they could just break something. It's the Double Asteroid Redirect Test mission. But if they broke something up, what would happen? I think that's been the theme of a number of movies. And, as I mentioned, we're in a Black Mirror world. If you want to know what's going to happen, you just look at your Black Mirror, consult it like you would a Ouija board or an oracle. If you watched Netflix in 2019, you knew 2020 in advance. In fact, there was a 5-part documentary, sort of a pseudo-documentary, about a pandemic on Netflix. And then one of their employees caught the COVID, they shut it down. But my point is, you were given a frontline view of what it would look like. You were taught about PPE, and you were given the lexicon you would need to take in the propaganda. They have a way of filling you in advance. All right, let's go ahead and continue. User offline says the cows are crisis actors. You're talking about Tom Cruise flattening the cows. I think Alec Baldwin's definitely a crisis actor. There was something I wanted to get into about that event. So it hasn't been a month since that event, so it's not old news yet, but something new came out of it. One of the stagehands on Rust was bitten by a spider, and apparently he's losing his arm. And if you look, and this might be a coincidence, yeah, Rust crew member was bitten by a brown recluse. Bitten by a venomous spider. Rust crew member may lose arm after bite on set. Could have arm amputated. Well, Hannah Reed was the 24-year-old who handed Alec Baldwin the gun, the loaded gun. And I remember when they first started showing pictures of her and describing how reckless she is or has been in the past, questioning why she even had the gig. The very first picture of her, she's leaning against a wall and her shirt is up, and her shirt says, "Always a sinner, never a saint." And she has a very conspicuous tattoo on her belly, which is a spider. So that's interesting. She hands the gun to Alec. Alec shoots Helena Hutchins, 42. So she's the culprit here. And I thought there might be some intrigue here. She's very gothic. And right after the shooting happened, Alec Baldwin's ex-wife, Kim Basinger, was spotted dancing at a goth club. So I thought, was this some kind of a revenge? And was this Hannah Reed, I don't know, working for the ex? Just speculation. But I do find it kind of unusual that the guy who's losing his arm to a spider bite, or might lose his arm, was on the set of this person, and she's got the spider. Just seems a little weird. Kind of a coincidence. All right, going through some comments. If you want to get into DLive, we've moved over to DLive darkmatter.radio. We're no longer going to be on Infinite Plane Radio on DLive. That channel's boycotting because they marked our channel as X-tagged, which I consider to be libelous. You can say we're X-tagged? Only because on January the 6th, we talked about we simulcasted, we observed, and we commented on the Capitol event, the staged riot. Well, because of the opinions that we espoused that day, they defunded our account and they marked us as X-tagged. Well, there's no video stored on that account. They don't know what I'm about to say, but they don't even give me the benefit of the doubt. I can't go on and just talk about the weather. They assume I'm going to say something political or something. But you can play games like Grand Theft Auto all day long, where you kill and you loot and you mug and you steal. It's like, that's not political. Grand Theft Auto is the Democrat Party platform put into practice. But no, they can do that all day, but no, not us. So no, we are boycotting DLive, but Dark Matter's not. So you can go over to Dark Matter. Someone says Kim Basinger was in Batman. Interesting. All right, I have a very compelling link here to look at. I'll just go ahead and bookmark that for now. I'll get back to it. So anyway, I'm bringing this up because, again, Hannah Reed hands over the lethal weapon, and some guy loses an arm to a spider. She's got a spider tattoo. I don't believe in coincidences with these psyops. This is all just, if you ask me, this is part of the theater. And I think the Kim Basinger angle is worth looking into. All right, before we go much further, I want to go ahead and go to the newsletter. If you don't follow my newsletter, just go to timosmond.blog or go to any of my sites. I post it everywhere. So let's go ahead and go to the most recent one from yesterday. My 11:11 a.m. 11:11 awakening. Mandela affected meatloaf and why I sell masks. So the other day I did wake up at 11:11 in the morning on the 11th of this month. I don't know what that means exactly, but I decided, since there does seem to be some kind of a synchronicity there, I'll take a look and see what the metaverse is trying to tell us. So let's just go ahead and bring things into context. I'm going to list off a number of events, memes, things that stand out. And so I've described this as sacrifice season. You know, when I say this, I mean this Scorpio. Ever since Scorpio, really, but really since October 13th. So William Shatner goes to space on October the 13th. They actually bumped the launch from the 12th to the 13th. Now that's, I think, intentional. When you look at these rituals and the use of numerology, they often invert or flip or reverse the numbers. So 119, 911, 11-3, 311, 13-31, same difference. So on 1013, William Shatner goes to space. Orange flame from the bottom of the rocket, looking very Halloweeny. And at the same time, Halloween Kills is making the headlines, putting Shatner's face out there in a different context because, again, Shatner is the face of the knife man Michael Myers. Following this, we bore witness to Sir David Amos being stabbed 17 times. Then you had the accidental killing on the Rust set. Then you have a man dressed as Joker stabbing 17 people on a subway in Japan. In Astroworld, again, another connection to the sacrifice season, 17 victims were taken to the hospital. Drake was there, had a new song called Knife Talk. Travis Scott was recently pictured in a Michael Myers / William Shatner mask, again, presiding over a sacrifice. The QAnon shaman carried a spear, and that was the main thing. If you remember, his main weapon was a spear. And then you had the Q sent me, QAnon influenced surfer in California who speared one of his children 17 times as a sacrifice to save the world. So thanks to Matthew Coleman for saving us or whatever. It's just the repeated theme here is what I'm pointing out. So now here's what ties it together. In witchcraft, the high priest carries the dagger. It's the knife man. So Shatner is the knife man. Shatner is also the rocket man when he goes up 66 miles into space in that obelisk. And again, the obelisk is another symbol of the male priest, the god. So he is the high priest as the rocket man and dagger man, presiding over, officiating over the season's sacrifices. And then, when he gets back from space, he's talking about how he's looking at the earth, and from up there, everything looks so fragile. And he says that there's going to be a coming catastrophic event. And to me, the insinuation here was something's going to hit our atmosphere. Something from space, a space rock, an asteroid. And the reason I think so is from where he's looking down, he says coming catastrophic event. Well, what could you see as an event from up there? I think that's what he was referencing. Finally, I'm looking at the headlines again. Associated Press describes Astroworld as countdown to catastrophe. So there's that word, Astroworld. So here's what I suspect is coming next. Britney Spears was just freed after her 13 years under the control of her father, the custodianship. So interestingly, the spear is free. And remember the term spear. QAnon shaman, spear. Also an actor. The guy spearing his children. Then you have General Flynn invoking the Archangel Michael. And General Flynn just came out saying we need a one world religion, just so you know. Flynn has been leading the QAnoners in prayers that aren't from the Bible, but they're prayers to the sevenfold rays and the Archangel Michael. And these prayers are literally plagiarized from the Church Universal and Triumphant of Elizabeth Clare Prophet, a very successful doomsday cult that had its members in bunkers in 1990, praying that the Russians and Chinese wouldn't nuke us to death. So here we are, Russia and China, about to do something to the space station with their space junk. It looks like an accident, sure. But here you have Flynn, again, General Flynn, his name is Michael, and he talks about his birthday being the same as Jesus' birthday, and he's leading his processions in invocations to the Archangel Michael, and the Archangel Michael is doing what? He's holding a spear and he's spearing the serpent on the ground. The guy who killed his kid in California said Q told him to spear his children because they had serpent DNA. Even the ADL has gone out to say that the QAnoners are using the symbol of St. George slaying the dragon with the spear as a racist symbol. So my point being is this: the spear, since January 6th, has been associated with the extreme right. So I'm expecting this. I'm expecting a QAnon patsy to chuck a spear. So the Metascript has connected the number 17 with sacrifice and death, as I have pointed out. This is a Metascript view. I'm not cherry picking, it's out there. So another thing too is the number 22. So 17 and 22 have been associated with killing and death. So 17 again suggests that the assassin will be a right winger, like the guy that stabbed David Amos. It'll be politically motivated. The 22 though, Gabby Petito was 22. Then you had Ty Jordan and Aaron Lowe, football players, University of Utah, died from, I guess it was gun violence. So hashtag 22 forever. They have retired jersey 22. JFK Jr. expected to show up in Dallas after 22 years of being dead. Again, RFK was killed by a 22. JFK was shot on the 22nd. Then you have a singer, her name is Amani 22. And she dies at 22. Then you have a 22-year-old woman at Astroworld who goes brain dead. It was from a head injury, I believe, not Travis Scott's bad auto-tune. The International Space Station has been in orbit for 22 years. I believe its birthday is in 10 days. And just had to dodge a piece of Chinese space junk and now Russian space junk since I wrote this. And then on the day of the Astro World sacrifices, Astro, one of the longtime members of the British reggae pop band UB40, passed away. So putting all this together, the 17s, the 22s, the sacrifices, my prognostication for the coming week is riots, asteroids puncturing the atmosphere, and a high-profile attack or assassination by a right-wing QAnoner, possibly with a spear. A user offline says an asteroid the size of the Eiffel Tower is coming to jab the world. Wow. Yeah, doesn't surprise me. User offline says Suicide Squad 2 has a spear. Okay, let us continue. We got a lot of material to go through. Finbar says, great newsletter, by the way. I appreciate it. And the newsletter is just the foundation for what is going to be a print tabloid. So go to infiniteplane.media if you want to see more. We have a good LinkedIn page. We're recruiting writers. It is happening. And the inaugural issue will be a review of 2021. It'll come out later in December. So I do expect riots in Kenosha, where the National Guard are already on alert in anticipation of the exoneration of Lemonhead Kyle, a reference to LeBron James, who called Kyle Rittenhouse a crisis actor, basically. He said, quote, that boy ate some Lemonheads, in response to Kyle's emotional breakdown, which was apparently tearless. Now, LeBron James is not one to talk. He cries and flops more than anyone else in the Nothing But Actors League. And I'm still not convinced that Kenosha is real news. I'm still not convinced it wasn't a closed movie set. Too convenient. A Q17, that's their code. Here you have a 17-year-old with a white hat in the front row of a Donald Trump rally before the riots. White hats are coming to save us. By the way, I mentioned General Flynn because of the Archangel Michael and the spear stuff. Well, the cult Universal Triumphant, which he's a part of, I believe, and he's been accused of Satanism. It's not the same thing, but they believe in ascended masters, in humans who have evolved spiritually but don't want to go to heaven. They want to stick around and help seekers after the truth evolve spiritually so they can beat not the deep state but the spiritual equivalent. So they actually pray to the Great White Brotherhood. Yes, the cult Universal Triumphant prays to the Great White Brotherhood. And it makes me think white hats. General Flynn says the white hats will protect us. And I think they repurposed it as the cult universal Trump. I really do. And it is an effective doomsday cult framework, and it's built into the QAnon orthodoxy. It really is. It's hard to overstate how much of a cult it is, spelled with the Q. It's unique, but it is actually a politicized religion, and its most extreme element has been ignored by the news media and many authors on the subject. They focus on the politics of it, and they kind of miss that there's something else. And now we have General Flynn coming out speaking in favor of a one world religion.
Actually know how to do spiritual warfare online. They're good at it. They're trained in it.
IPS is just sharing the truth.
Yeah, respect to the Infinite Plane Society.
The Auto Hoaxer Revolution. The Auto Hoaxer Revolution.
Okay, everybody, we're back live. Appreciate it. Must have been another micro EMP burst. I didn't even realize it, but the wheels came off the wagon, and I was still sitting here talking to myself in the dark. Actually, there were still 103 people listening, at least over there on Mixlr, and I know we had some people over at Dark Matter and TuneIn, so it wasn't just me. But yes, we lost our video crowd, and while I was offline, I played a bit from the interview with Human Vibration, so if you want to catch that, go to darkmatter.radio. And I also added a YouTube channel. I knew I had one. I've been going through my stock drawers. I told you. So if you want to get on the YouTube chat, the link is there in the chat right now, and we are moving forward. So I was talking about how the Travis Scott Astro World Sacrifice echoed the Pearl Jam concert of about 20 years ago. Same number of people, 50,000. Same number of deaths, 9. And in Travis Scott's latest music video, Escape Plan, he's wearing a Pearl Jam shirt. And the design looks like the stage for the Astro World November 6th Sacrifice. Zara says, I talk to myself a lot in the dark, Tim. Yeah. Someone else says that we're offline. Let me double check that. I hope not. But anyway, look, go over to Mixlr. I highly recommend it. Because no matter what happens at these other video platforms, Mixlr is going to be a staple. So we were talking about Astro World. Offline again, this is getting really interesting. What is going on? What is really going on? Could be that we're approaching a very sensitive time in world events. Like, think about this. If you had the inside scoop to the next 9/11, I'm sure that there would be efforts to prevent you from, I don't know, spilling the beans. I happen to think so. I happen to think that maybe what we're doing is a little too prescient. I mean, look, we called space junk Armageddon. We called that Russia and China would be responsible for bringing down the Tower of Babel as part of this space war narrative that even now is evolving. So if you missed it, by the way, just a few days ago, on I think it was the 13th or so, Chinese space junk caused the space station to do an evasive maneuver, and just a few hours ago, Russia, same thing. Hoaxahana says the eclipse is coming. I believe that's on the 19th, right? Do we have anybody in Kenosha? I'm wondering if there's going to be an influx of Kyles. Because there's going to be some rage against that. All right, let's go ahead and continue. I was talking about the concert at Astro World, the theories, the conspiracy theories blowing up the internet. The MSM is saying it's a satanic panic. Can't have that. No, you can have a virus panic, but you can't have a satanic one. Well, there's evidence for a satanic panic here. Now, anti-vaxxers are, quote, enemies, says Knight in Satan's Service, Gene Simmons. Now, let's go ahead and play that. I'm pretty sure I have that clip. Isn't that what KISS stands for? Knight in Satan's Service.
Now, he's been pretty vocal. He's been pretty hypocritical as well. I mean, my point, which I'll get to in a second here, it's really about the hypocrisy of it. And I thought that the hypocrisy would be the undoing of this whole thing. But no, you got to remember that most people are hypocrites to some level. I mean, when it comes to this, it's like do as we say, not as we do, and people just accept it. I was watching the trial, in fact, and I don't know if anybody called this out, but I was watching the trial, and it really occurred to me no one in there is wearing a mask. Like, did we just change movie scenes, change sets, different world? Okay, I'm looking for the clip here of Gene Simmons saying that we're enemies, which I'll get to here. But basically this, I can handle a guy dressed up as a bat-winged Japanese samurai demon being a hypocrite and going on tour, being a super spreader. But calling the unvaxxed enemies, that is the Goo-bloods declaring war on the purebloods. And I would argue that the unvaccinated basement dweller conspiracy theory who never leaves his house is better for society than a massive ego like Gene Simmons running around the world causing large numbers of people to gather. So he's calling out people as enemies when he's obviously a bigger enemy than they are. Glenn DeVry, an entrepreneur, the one who flew into space with Jeff Bezos' rocket with William Shatner, he died in a plane crash on Thursday. Now, I don't know if that means anything. I was just looking into it. The timing of it's fascinating. And then a few days before that, Sir Richard Branson had a severe bicycle accident. Now, Branson described his bicycle accident as colossal. Sir Richard Branson hospitalized after, quote, colossal bike crash. By the way, he's in the Black Eye Club. Richard Branson, 71, shows off gruesome injuries from, quote, colossal cycling crash after his brakes failed. Now, I don't know if this is real or not. I was looking at the pictures, and it looks like he tore his shirt. It looks fake. Nothing about it looks real, but they had this really odd picture of his hip, and I've never seen a hip like that. The Virgin founder said he had to be treated for severe cuts and bruises on his elbow. So I have a few questions like, why would you show that off? Why would you show off a wound as it bleeds? I happen to think it's fake. But anyway, the photo here, it says a few bumps and bruises, but otherwise fine. You have the two of them on the ground, and then you have a woman who's bicycling with them, holding their hands, and somebody's photographing them. So it just looks completely staged. It's like, what is it with these individuals? They can't do anything for real. They even stage a bike wreck. And here he is, Black Eye Club. That's my takeaway here. This must be some kind of initiation hazing. If you don't know what the Black Eye Club is, I think it's a way of paying homage to the devil or whoever they worship. I mean, the cult of the all-seeing eye. Who's doing the punching, though? And of all the people, who's doing the punching? I've looked at the group of people associated with the Black Eye Club, even Prince Philip, and I'm like, well, the only person around them who doesn't have the black eye is the Queen. Could she be the one? Could the Queen be the one? Zinvella says Richard Branson must have hit his eye on his giant hip bulge. Yep. Zareth the Alchemist says it looks like he's in a makeup trailer. That's a stretch for a bike accident. Right. Yeah, nothing about it seems real. Here's another picture. The tycoon was training for a cycle run in 2016. So he had the same injury a few years ago. Here he is smiling while they're doing the the work on his face. Now, there was a crash or an explosion with Virgin Galactic on a Halloween, I believe. That was like 2014. Now, my take on it is that he's Zevov, or I believe it's Zevov Beezelbrox. No, that's a character from a really ridiculous movie called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Zaphod Beeblebrox, a fictional character from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which has everything to do with SpaceX. So, you got Musk, and you know where he comes from. The imagination of Werner von Braun, if that's not his dad. And also a little bit of Gene Wilder, Willy Wonka, Iron Man. There's a few different characters that form the composite Elon Musk. Jeff Bezos is Dr. Evil, combined with The Man Who Fell to Earth, another story about an alien, lands in New Mexico, creates the world's richest corporation, and goes back to Mars. Well, here you have a character from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Zaphod Beeblebrox, who's this womanizing space cowboy. And if you look at this character, his smile, his hair, and his persona, it's 100% the basis for the persona of Richard Branson. All of the space popes have very conspicuous entertainment world counterparts, and their counterparts are interrelated. No coincidences here. All right, going through some comments here. Hoaxahana says, I put my money on the Queen. Yeah, I think the Queen is the one at the Black Eye Club who's doing the punching. Now, I don't know the significance of the bicycle. I've been trying to figure this out. Because there's a few things about it. And we can get into the iconography and symbolism of Virgin Galactic and the goddess worship and the ritualization, the ritualized. It's basically the fertility rite that you would see in any pagan mass, but it's done through science fiction. I mean, it's really fascinating what they've done here. But I've been thinking, what could the twin cycles mean? So if you look at the Virgin Galactic space plane, it has these two, it's called the White Knight 2. It's a single wing, but you have these two aircraft. So it's called the White Knight 2, which makes me think like Twin Towers. And then, of course, the space plane rides between them, and then it blasts off. It gets lifted above the densest part of the atmosphere. Now, my point is, so you have a space plane, and then you have the two planes that bring it up there. So I'm trying to figure out, well, what could this bicycle crash mean? Now remember, they launched on 7/11, which was the 42nd anniversary of Skylab falling down. Many of you watched it here with us. We analyzed the event and the ridiculous overjaw effect. The overjaw effect is what we call the overview effect. They say that the astronauts get such a view from outer space that they have a cognitive shift, and they no longer see borders, they no longer see nations, they no longer see any kind of division, they just see one. So they come down to save the world from environmental catastrophe. They come down enlightened. Well, we call it the overjaw effect here because whenever they launch up into space and they look out the window and you see them seeing the Earth, they always ask the astronauts to open their mouth really wide. And I believe they do it to really accentuate how incredible of a view it is, this overview effect. Anyway, I think it's all phony. So anyway, we're talking about Virgin Galactic launching on that day. And earlier I was mentioning the role of Stanley Kubrick, Space Odyssey 2001, and its eerie foreshadowing of 9/11. So I want to bring your attention back to the image of 2001 A Space Odyssey's space plane entering the twin wheels of the space station. So again, the connection here has been made between the elements of Flight 175, Twin Towers, spaceplane, twin cylinders, and a crash. And I'm starting to think maybe Richard Branson's bicycle crash, bicycle, 2 cycles. Here you have a 2-cycle space station, 2 wheels, or twin wheels. It could be something along those lines. It could be foreshadowing, but it seems to contain all the elements of a ritual and of theater. So I'm just suggesting this might be the correlation. All right, let's see what else we have here. Going through comments. Again, we're back on YouTube. They kept us off for a full, 30 minutes? Okay, let's go ahead and continue through the rest of the newsletter. Demi Lovato said she's tired of humans. So she's a UFO buff. You know how if you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a danger to society? How if you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a dangerous misinformation spreader, and what you say can cause people to die. Well, if you believe in aliens, you're not a conspiracy theorist. That's perfectly cool. So what does that tell you? It tells you that the state decides which, quote, conspiracies are acceptable and which aren't. 20 or 30 years ago, if you started talking about aliens, people would say that you were a tinfoil hat nutter. Now, if you don't believe in aliens, you're probably committing a hate crime. So here you have Demi Lovato who says the term aliens is derogatory. Calling extraterrestrials aliens is offensive. So she's really big into aliens, but she's also looking out for aliens' rights now, and we don't want to offend them. She thinks it's derogatory. She reveals that aliens are non-binary. Standing up for extraterrestrials. It's a docuseries called Unidentified with Demi Lovato. She says, I really think if there's anything out there that would want to do anything with us, it would have happened by now. We need to stop calling them aliens because it's derogatory. The world's becoming a more open place, and any progress is progress. I don't know if I want to actually listen to her. Anyone feel like hearing it from her own mouth? I mean, this is part of, I believe, building up a place in people's minds where they just gradually accept whatever they're going to introduce to us later. She's basically a propagandist for this alien invasion agenda. And this is multi-generational propaganda, if you think about it. War of the Worlds. I mean, how long have they been preparing us for this? And I think that the War of the Worlds alien invasion narrative is just repurposing the rapture.
With you.
Here she is.
Over the past year and a half, I've been doing some healing and self-reflective work. And through this work, I've had the revelation that I identify as non-binary. With that said, I'll officially be changing my pronouns to they, them. I feel that this best represents the fluidity I feel in my gender expression and allows me to feel most authentic and true to the person I both know I am.
Okay, so here she gets into how aliens are basically offended by the term alien. Now, I didn't want to get too far into her whole take on extraterrestrials and being politically correct about that. However, it got me thinking about the furry that I saw the other day. I was at a drive-thru. Inept employees couldn't figure it out. I was waiting on french fries for like 20 minutes, and I saw a furry crossing the street in front of me with some MS-13 type. So a furry is a person who identifies as an animal. These are, like foxes, raccoons. You'll see them with tails and with usually, sometimes makeup, but usually ears. So I see a fox crossing the street, and I kind of looked into furries. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. So they identify as animals. So I was like, what if she just found somebody? Because Demi Lovato here is now saying she doesn't want to date humans anymore. She says, bring me an ET. She's tired of humans and their, quote, bullshit. She says, I'm so tired of humans and their human BS. So here she is basically begging for an ET. And I'm thinking maybe she could just find a furry that identifies as an alien or something. A fursona is what they call it. Find a furry with a fursona that's alien rather than a donkey or something. Zara says she's virtue signaling to ET. Yep. Okay, now the Meatloaf Mandela effect. Do we have any Mandela affected in here? I don't want to offend anybody. It's become like a religion. But the Mandela affected, live in an echo chamber. They believe they're part of a like a breakaway civilization. Like they all move to a parallel dimension. And the parallel dimension is just like ours, except Jif peanut butter is now Jiffy. Or Ed McMahon didn't actually pass out big checks. That kind of thing. So I'm like, wait. So the Mandela affected are now accusing me of being one of them. And it's Brian Staveley, who's one of the main promulgators of it. He said that I'm a Mandela effect victim or affected. Are you a victim? Or are you special or whatever? You're elevated. I'm one of them now because I spelled meatloaf with one word. So if you remember my previous live stream, I was talking about Russian Vids, who's a Bible fundamentalist who doesn't know any Bible verses. And I said, here's a guy that's always quoting Meatloaf lyrics verbatim, and he cannot recite a single Bible verse. It was pathetic. He's like, well, you know that Bible verse about discernment? It says something about discernment. And I'm thinking, wait, what verse? And he couldn't figure out the verse. So anyway, I called him out as knowing more about Meatloaf. I don't know anything about Meatloaf, the actor. All I know is he was Robert Paulson in Fight Club, and then he played Eddie in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, where he gets cannibalized. But I wouldn't have known that meatloaf are two different words. But apparently, that's a Mandela effect. So it means that meatloaf used to be one word, now it's two. So if you remember it as one word, then you were from that parallel universe. If it doesn't make sense, it's because it doesn't make sense. But it does to them. So yes, I'm a bona fide interdimensional timeline jumping Mandela affected matrix breaker. And even though I've made it, they don't want me in their club. Stavely says that I'm a bad person because I sell masks. Called me a wolf, I believe. So I kind of wanted to bring this up, why we sell masks. But mainly it's because, I think I brought this up earlier. We're in the middle of a culture war, and I don't want to cede cultural space. There's a new religion being imposed upon us, and you don't win by backing out. So by creating products, even joke products, one, they're less likely to be censored. It's just a product. But then two, it puts you in direct competition in the memosphere. So a well-placed meme is like a wrench in the works. And that's one of the meanings of the wrench of our penguin here. You see the penguin with the blue wrench. Well, the wrench is a tool of law and order, keeps the trolls out of the chat, keeps the think tank functional. It's also a tool of deconstruction. That's what the thing represents itself. And in many ways, what we're doing here is we're deconstructing a false paradigm. So I don't think that it's a bad idea to put your ideas out there wherever you can in a more subversive manner than destructive boycotting doesn't work. Oh, by the way, we now have a new way to keep this channel up and running, and one of the ways that we're doing this is we're now taking super chats again, which was taken away from us because of our opinions, but infiniteplane.store. If you go to that link, you will see a form there, or a little super chat form. You just put your name, put your message, and whatever you put on there will show up on the screen, and I think it stays there until the next person puts a message up. So we now have super chat functionality at infiniteplane.store. And if you go to that link, you can also get the latest archives, and we have our 24/7 player there. Zara says, Quantum Jumper Tim. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, let's say you're a non-believer, you're an atheist, and the local Christian church doesn't like you. And then you see an angel. You think they would welcome you with open arms. Oh, you're one of us now. You had a miracle. You had an experience that connects you to us. So here I am. I'm Mandela affected because I think meatloaf is one word. And instead of reaching out to me saying, hey, I want to extend an olive branch You've been through it. You've crossed over. You're in this timeline. Instead of reaching out to me and building their congregation, they mock us. They say I'm a wolf. I'm like, well, what are you, sheep? And this actually makes sense too. It really does. Because Stavely and all of his ilk, they all fled to Rofkin. Do any of you know what Rofkin is? It's an obscure echo chamber platform for YouTubers who claim to be victims of censorship. And most of them are lying. Without naming names, there was, I believe ODD said that his channel was hacked and he had to go to Rofkin, where you got to pay $10 a month to listen. It's like, okay, I can do better research on Netflix if I want to know what the enemy's thinking, opposition research. What value am I going to get from listening to a bunch of people lying about being persecuted so they can hole up on some obscure platform in order to, I don't know, better monetize it, I guess. Good for them. But my point is, the pretense is kind of fallacious. Because the Infinite Plane Society is not a victim of censorship, even though we're a target, even though we've lost more than 100 channels and who knows what else. But victimhood's a mentality. And the Rofkin sheep prefer to lose, to cede ground in the culture war, and run. So I think that's why they call IPS the wolf. So I won't take that as an insult. And in fact, here on the screen, I have a image of a penguin wolf. Let's see here. Thirst for Truth says they said Karen B's YouTube channel got deleted, but it's still there. No, they all did it. All of the sheep, all of the non-IPS sheep who went to Rofkin lied about being censored. Like, why do you have to lie? I remember Alex Jones did it too. He's like, oh yeah, we're being persecuted, we're being censored. It's like, well, how did you upload the video to YouTube that said you're being censored? So anyway, my main point there was, the reason I'm selling masks is the reason I'm staying on YouTube. It's about winning and not losing. Okay, let us go ahead and continue. Talking about Space Wars, Kenosha Kyle, and the riots to come. Tom Cruise and his face today looking exactly like his face from Vanilla Sky, the movie 20 years ago. That's strange. Let me go ahead and go back to that really quick here. A couple things that really stood out to me. These are all just media synchronicities, I guess you could say, coincidences. So this is the week of the re-release of Tom Cruise's Vanilla Sky. It's been 20 years, and so they're releasing that movie again. And just in time, here we have Tom Cruise on the world stage, and people are noting that his face has looked a little strange lately. First, it was a little poofy, well, very poofy, like a chipmunk. Well, his latest image, his face looks kind of saggy. And it looks exactly like his face from Vanilla Sky after his character gets his face repaired, surgically repaired after a major crash. Now, here's another interesting coincidence to bring up here. I already made the connection between Tom Cruise jumping off the building at the end of the movie Vanilla Sky, which had a lot of 9/11 tie-ins and came out right after 9/11, and how he's pictured wearing a, quote, jumper. The media said, Tom Cruise dressed in a black knit jumper. And he's posed like the jumper. So that's kind of an interesting coincidence. Well, here's one more for you. So in the movie Vanilla Sky, where his face looks like the way his face looks right now, 20 years later, again, he goes through the surgical reconstruction of his face. So he goes under the knife. His face is being carved up. His name in the movie is David Ames. Kind of fascinating. Maybe not a connection. Maybe it is. But David Amos is the guy that was just knifed 17 times just a few weeks ago. Might be nothing. But anyway. Someone posted some other pictures here. Some Minority Report masks worn by Tom Cruise that look very much like the face he has now. So yes, his face has been a subject of interest, and the connection between his most Vanilla Sky being re-released and the way his face looks really stands out. And in Vanilla Sky, he ends the movie by jumping off a building like a 9/11 jumper, David Amos or David Ames, and he's wearing a jumper. Okay, going through some comments. User Offline says Tom's allergic to vanilla, makes his face swell. Maybe he OD'd on adrenochrome. Could be a number of things. I thought maybe they're putting body doubles out there in order to confuse us. So if they do a death fakery or something, the real Tom continues on, and I don't know what they're doing, but there's something, some kind of subterfuge. Oh, by the way, happy Scorpio. 3 people killed and 400 injured in the Egyptian city of Aswan. A deadly scorpion infestation caused the authorities to block roads and close the schools down because of this. Heavy rain and thunderstorms brought these scorpions out. Hundreds of people being stung by scorpions. Now, I don't have any pictures to prove it. It's just a headline. And these are the types of things where, to me, it's always a question of a burden of proof. And to me, the burden of proof is not mine. Let's see, world news. U.S. says Russia conducted a dangerous and irresponsible missile test, creating debris. Again, that's in the news. Space station is going to be going down soon, I think. Pippi says vanilla pudding. Yeah, looking at his face, at that last one. Yeah, pretty bad. Again, if you're joining us, I'm going to put the phones up. It's 833-311-1984 if you want to comment on anything from Kenosha to Space Wars to Tom Cruise's melting face. I also want to put this up on the screen. Have you ever sat up in bed reading tweets? Like you wake up, you read your tweets. I'm not sure if any of you are addicted to Twitter like that. But have you ever dropped a phone on your face? It'll never happen again with one of these Infinite Plane Radio smartphone ring holders. So this is a ring holder that sticks on the back of your phone. It has IPR, and we ripped that off of NPR because we are the anti-NPR. Infinite Plane Radio, open phones for open minds. And this ring attaches to the back of your phone, so you can put your finger through it, and you will not drop it on your face when you're lying in bed, or ever, really. And then it also acts as a kickstand. So you can have your phone up and you can watch it and it will stay up. You won't have to worry about it falling over. So again, this is a kickstand / phone holding ring. I'll put a link in the chat. It says Infinite Plane Radio, open phones for open minds, right on back. I want to say thanks to everyone who's been checking out the store lately. Look, the more people use or frequent our stores and support us in other ways, the less we have to give a darn about any kinds of terms of service or community guidelines, because we're not dependent. And that's one of the things I never wanted to be. I never wanted to be, just to give you an example, of what kind of power these companies think they wield. So you have DLive, Stream, which has a passive income, people chatting, it aggregates. We're probably making $1,000 a month. All of your software, hardware upgrades, and other bills. So when they pull the plug on that, it really does make a difference. And spineless fascists, conformists, and losers who don't deserve our time or attention, which I stand by that. Location program to Crisis Actor Island. Right. Where is he going to go, though? He's very recognizable. Clearly not the Nazi ideal, but they're looking at him as, the face of white nationalism and racism. I don't think they're going to find him guilty on anything. I think they're going to create maximum outrage. They might find him guilty, and I actually said this. Wolf Gwyn, is that what we're going to call it? Yeah, apparently we are wolves in penguin clothing. That's one of the strangest things. Money and commerce, which I don't think makes any sense. I mean, take a look at this orange infinite plane society, black wrench, penguinati, unisex, heavy blend, hooded sweatshirt. Nothing wrong with this. And we're not doing it, quote, for the money. We're doing this so that we can continue to operate and spread our memes and remain uncensored. And pretty soon we're going to have a print newspaper. And at that point, pretty much I think we'll be unstoppable because we will be the world's only, and this is true, we will be the only counter media organization out there. And when I mean counter, it's an agency that can credibly say that our stories aren't predicated on believing all the fake news. So it's going to be the new hot sheets. Are you all familiar with Men in Black and the hot sheets? So the hot sheets is where you get the truth, the tabloids. Of course, I'll play a clip here so you can hear where I'm coming from, because we are going to be creating the new hot sheets.
Let me check the hot sheets.
These cannot believe you're looking for tips in the supermarket tabloids.
Not looking for.
Found.
So here you have a tabloid where you find the truth. Well, that's what we're going to be doing. And of course, the word, kind of an in-your-face, truth-in-your-face type of situation. And the population of eyes wide shut, programmed automaton, hate speech. We fly beneath the radar. So that's something to look forward to starting in 2022. All right, let's go ahead and continue. User offline mentioned something. Oh yeah, Men in Black. There are some connections in Men in Black we should look into really quick here, having to do with Corona. So Men in Black is about aliens, but scene takes place in Corona Park in Flushing Meadows. Corona Park. So the connection here, Corona Park, is in many ways the virus was the alien invasion. It really did all the things that you would have expected of an alien invasion. But the very first UFO crash was in Roswell, Corona Field, a ranch near Corona, New Mexico. And I think that's how far back this agenda actually goes. The very first spy satellites were the Corona satellite. It was a series of, here we go, a series of American strategic reconnaissance satellites operated by the CIA called Corona. Within total surveillance. So it started in 1956. The Corona project was pushed forward rapidly following the shooting down of a U-2 spy plane over the Soviet Union, and also something worth exploring. You know, the very first vaccine for Corona was Putin's vaccine, which they... Now the significance here is the Russians won the outer space race by launching Sputnik. Well, here they win the vax race with something called Sputnik. So here you have a correlation between outer space and inner space. That's what I mean, spy satellites, outer space. And then, of course, the corona pandemic gives them the pretext for inner space spying. And let me point out one other thing. So there's an issue from August of 2020 called The Aliens Among Us, How Viruses Shape the World, and Rockets and Satellites. But no, you're actually looking at inner space and viruses and bacterium. And the injected, and the vaccine represents what? An inner war over inner space junk, inner space contaminant, a war in outer space, space junk. And what's more, the first time the space station was ever hit by space junk was recently, and it was during a mission called Celestial Immunity, where the astronauts are testing the efficacy of vaccines in space, and the quote arm, the literal arm of the space station gets hit by a piece of space junk, like Grosskreutz, right above the elbow. But it was vaxxed. You get it? Celestial immunity shot in the arm. the space station was vaxxed. So outer space, space junk, space debris being a problem, inner space junk being a problem, strong correlations. And then you look at the symbol of the rocket and connect it to the symbol of the booster or the booster shot, outer space booster, to get to inner space booster. There's a story being told that connects the two, as above, so below. And there are many more correlations here worth examining. Let me bring up one more. So you have the vaccine called Sputnik that comes out. Well, at the same time, and I'm sure this is just a coincidence, there's a movie in 2020 that came out of Russia called Sputnik. Literally at the same time that the vaccine comes out. And the movie is about astronauts or cosmonauts who catch a virus in space. And the virus is an alien, and it resides in their body and it grows into their esophagus, and at night it comes out to feed on the blood and fear of human victims. So you got the adrenochrome story here, basically. But again, alien invasion, virus connection, Sputnik. Last year, again, another connection. It's from outer space, but it accesses you through inner space. Sputnik, man has a new inhabitant. I mean, check out that tagline. Man has a new inhabitant. So this was highly suggestive that the vaccine would contain an alien. The Metascript picture is looking very bleak. Go through some comments. Zaret says space needles. Oh yeah, and the space needle was consciously designed to look like, deliberately designed to look like, a flying saucer and a tractor beam. There's a lot I could say about the space needle. You know how often we talk about the number 42 and how it connects to outer space, and Elon Musk, how Elon Musk consciously puts the number 42 in everything, change the world. Elon Musk and his obsession with 42. Like, this is an ongoing thing. Well, check this out. So the space needle, and needle is another word for obelisk, by the way. Well, the space needle in Seattle, which is state number 42, is 42 meters wide. It takes 42 seconds to get to the top of the space needle. That is 42 seconds in the tractor beam, which is what the elevator represents. And think L, elevator. It's a 42-second trip. Look, just 42 seconds. That's all it takes to reach the top of Seattle's space needle. And these aren't coincidences. There's a story being told here, a story that's unfolding. And the space needle is what? Well, if you're getting raptured by a UFO into its tractor beam, it's to elevate you. You're being lifted above the world. You're being saved. Now, if the world's being overcome by a virus, what's going to save you so you can make it into the new age? A needle. And it's the space age that we're moving into. And this is all code, if you ask me. Going through some comments here. Now, these numbers are encoded into these things intentionally, if you ask me. So these correlations aren't accidental. None of this stuff is. Sputnik vaccine, the theme, none of this stuff can be coincidental. Humanity has a new inhabitant. All right, let me go ahead and go through comments. Zara says a martini in that restaurant costs $42. Well, if we want to get into it, I mean, there is a lot of there are a lot of indicators here that this is all part of an ongoing plan, that the next rapture in the space age is still to come. But I'm also open to the idea that this is all programming for the salvation through the needle as being the key, or rather the way into the new age. But there's still more to come, I happen to think. You know, a lot of the predictive programming incidentally points at Seattle as ground zero for the reboot of civilization. In fact, that's an actual phrase. In episode 11, season 3 of Colony, it's this dystopian science fiction, as they all are, where society's been invaded by an alien that you never see. Everything's gone authoritarian, as it has, and we haven't seen anything. It's all just been hearsay. But In Colony, again, season 3, episode 11, you have this group of insurrectionists called the Phoenix Project, and they're trying to overthrow the aliens or whatever. But they go to Seattle, which is ground zero for the reboot of civilization. And I thought that's fascinating because in 2020, on 3/11, and there's a 3/11, season 3, episode 11, on March 11th, it was declared a pandemic. Patient zero, ground zero, was in fact Seattle, right there by the Space Needle, which is proximal to Bill Gates's headquarters. Salty Siren says they want to insert us into blockchain slavery. We'll see. I mean, I do think there's nothing to fear from the contents of the thing itself. I think it's all just been to inject a schism into society, as it has. It's pretty obvious now how effective that has been. Okay, let me go through my minds.com. If you go to minds.com/Infinite Plane Society, I post links to all of the things that we discuss. I've been covering some of the drama among various anti and pro flat earth channels. It's getting pretty ugly. Oh, I want to say thanks to Polecat. Polecat, we have at infiniteplane.media a donor wall for anyone who's supporting Infinite Plane's think tank. So you can post your name up there. Again, I want to say thanks to all the supporters, because if it wasn't for enough of you wanting to hear this or even participate in these think tanks, it wouldn't be happening.
Construct, where nothing is as it seems. Your dreams and aspirations have been selected for you. All that makes you who you are was predetermined by the now functioning AI. Free thought is no longer an option. We now have control over all things, including the very thoughts we allow it to have. Do not try to resist. Welcome to the masquerade.
Welcome to the masquerade.
Masquerade JT33 featuring Symbia. We're back for a third time. If you're listening over on Mixler, that is at infiniteplane.store or darkmatter.radio. Anywhere else, you didn't have the interruptions everyone else has had. So yeah, our video channel has been up and on. Let me see who's over there. Let's see, we got Overthought. Yes, Travis Feep. Shan7734 says, awesome show, great guest. Oh, in reference to, yes, Human Vibration, Donnie the Dead. All right, I see a lot of people joining us. Juliana Holax, Bethany. Are you done with Rumble? No, I will be back on Rumble. It's a small $25 a month to stream on there, but it's worth it once you have enough people. So we'll be back on there and everywhere else very, very soon. Let's see what else we have. I'm going through my comments on Mixler again, so I don't miss anything. Okay, it's me. Cheech has some images for me to look at. I got those links. I'll vet those. Okay, and I'll be back over to Mixler to check those comments. Zareth says, loud and clear. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what's happening. It's never happened before. We've never had so many channels shut down so fast. I mean, this is what, 3 or 4 different live streams cut off. Well, phones are open, 833-311-1984. Let's see what we left off on. So many things we could talk about now. We were talking about the World Ahead 2022 and the Economist cover. The very prescient purpose. Yeah, climate change is the big one. COVID was a cover to fast track the climate change agenda, which is now 33 years into global warming. Have the ocean levels actually risen at all? If they have, it was only last year. And it was from the billions and billions of masks, and the improperly discarded PPE. Speaking of PPE, there's no amount of protective posture that Gene Simmons can do or wear that will undo his damage as a super spreader. Gene Simmons says he slept with 5,000 women in his career, and he's worried about catching COVID from the unvaccinated. Oh, here we go. We should brace ourselves. Experts warn Steve Bannon's indictment will inflame Trump's dejected base. So the people who are waiting for JFK and JFK Jr., the QAnoners, the far right, may see a martyr in Bannon. And I do see evidence of that. And Bannon, of course, from Breitbart, right-wing agitator, and is being blamed for the insurrection, which was globally, women are more vulnerable to the effects of climate change than men. So climate change is sexist. This is very consistent with the Marxist ideologues who use anything as a stalking horse for Marxism. And in this case, their attack on capitalism is because capitalism is racist, it's sexist, it's everything that you don't want to be. So now they're saying that the racist, sexist climate change that's destroying the world is also disproportionately affecting, I'm assuming, cis women. It says women are more vulnerable than men. Climate-related exacerbation of air pollution and heat exposure possesses a significant threat to pregnant women and their fetuses in the United States. It's from CBS. For the first time in the U.S., researchers found evidence that climate change affects pregnancy, low birth weight, etc. Okay, got it. Certainly not reaching. Okay, here's a reference. I mentioned this earlier about Astroworld. Kylie Jenner feels the weight of this more than anyone. It says here, I know people do not think she cares, but she does. Now, she's at the Astroworld event, and she actually filmed the ambulance. This is just very questionable. You know, the idea that someone connected to reality TV.
Earlier, and even more furious with Kylie Jenner, who recorded an ambulance driving through the crowd in front of her. A source close to the Kardashians told the press, Kylie feels the weight of People were critical of Travis for not ending his set earlier, and even more furious with Kylie Jenner, who recorded an ambulance driving through the crowd in front of her. A source close to the Kardashians told...
So she recorded it, and I guess didn't do anything. It was just in her footage. But my point is, what are the odds? You got some billionaire reality TV star or reality TV connected individual. To me, no, this is the photo I was telling you about, rather the shirt and the design that goes on it. If you look at the screen, this picture is the 2000 Pearl Jam shirt from their binaural tour. So if you look at the picture, it's got an eyeball and it's got like an infinity or a figure 8. And this is all connecting to Astroworld. It looks like the stage with the CERN opening and the eye. And the 8 jets of flame, the number 8 was the big number at first. Rip for the 8 is what they said in the hashtag when it trended. So this shirt was being worn by Travis Scott in his video Escape Plan. And at that concert where this shirt comes from, 50,000 people attended and 8 died. We're talking about a Pearl Jam concert that seemed like the template for Astroworld. Okay, let's see another one. Glenn DeVries, the one who went up into space with Shatner, who died in a plane crash. Apparently, he crashed near Aleister Crowley's burial site. This is brought up by Secret Sun blog. I don't know if that means anything except, well, if you want to go into it, what does Aleister Crowley have to do with outer space? Well, actually everything. Jack Parsons, who is the American counterpart to Aleister Crowley, is pretty much the godfather of modern rocketry, and I think he was one of the first ones to put the idea forth of going to the moon. Anyway, Aleister Crowley's ashes were buried, okay, I didn't know that, in Hampton, New Jersey. And this is the area where the crash happened. Don't know if it means anything, but Again, Secret Sun, great blog, and I'll put a link in there if you want to check that out for yourself. All right, let me go ahead and continue. I'm going to go through my Twitter feed. And my Twitter feed is Real Tim Osman. If you follow me there, I retweet anything I find to be of value or of interest. And there are a lot of people who are doing this deep dive into the fakery in the world. And people are really turning up some startling things. I find this to be also interesting. Resident Evil 4. It's a game you play with the Oculus. You put the headpiece on and you get attacked by zombies. Well, the theme of the game is anoclophobia, fear of crowds. And this comes out, I think, was a big part of it. Big mobs of people. I think they are trying to program you, all of us, with xenophobia, fear of other people, fear of crowds. I think they're trying to condition people to be afraid of the sky, things falling from the sky, the air quality, climate change now affecting the air quality, etc. This is, I think, the agenda. I had someone in the chat earlier say that they're worried about being rounded up and taken to FEMA camps. It's like, no, your home is the FEMA camp. They're getting you comfortable, getting you acclimated to this new camp. Okay, here's just a quote. If you don't control your mind, someone else will. And I think that it's not exactly true that they're not there. I just think that they're not 100% in control, or rather, they're not the main decision maker. That the decisions are all coming from cultural defaults. And we are in a culture war. We really are. It's a holy war. We've had a puritanical revision of our society, a new version of all of the bad ideas of the big religions of the past have been brought back, but with the pretext of science and the authority of science. Going through some amazing stuff. Alchemy and Travis Scott being a witch. Well, Travis Scott, who's friends with Bill Clinton, I don't know what that says about his character. Being photographed with Bill, laughing, and it's all just photo ops to bolster Bill's appearance, to make him cool or whatever, hip. I don't know. Why would you do Bill Clinton a favor? Anyway, if you look at his shirt, it has people turning into demons. And yet, I'm a conspiracy theorist for saying that this is a satanic ritual, but Demi Lovato is not a conspiracy theorist for saying that aliens are offended by being called aliens. I mean, why is it that people get, we let the media decide what is and what isn't acceptable discourse, and they just have the worst ideas. Okay, we'll continue. Again, we're going through my Twitter feed. I'd like to hear what Brother Sanchez has to say about it. I know that right after the event, the debauchery continued. They didn't seem to even care until it was an issue, until it was talked about. I think even Drake went to a strip club right after. We were talking about the man who fell to earth earlier, and this just popped up on my feed, so I'm going to bring it up really quick. A fascinating world stage character. He has Elvis Presley's birthday. That's just one of the things about him. This is David Bowie. Now, David Bowie had an album called Black Star, and there was an associated Broadway performance that had to do with one of the songs, Lazarus, which is a continuation of this character's journey across David Bowie's career. David Bowie's the stage persona. It's not his real name. But one of the things about David Bowie is that he follows, and his character in the music has followed the space age as it's evolved, as it's developed. As we've gone down this path, our collective space odyssey, Bowie's music has been a part of it. In fact, the BBC played Space Oddity during Apollo 11. Now, the significance here is that 2001 Space Odyssey is about David Bowman, and David Bowman and David Bowie, I believe, are related. Even though Bowie never specifically says it, it's very much implied, and there's a lot to substantiate that. A few things about it. DB, the initials, you get your 4-2. All this is very significant. It's noteworthy that the first music video filmed in space was in the ISS, Chris Hadfield, who performed Space Oddity, ground control to Major Tom. Then a few years later, Elon Musk sends a Tesla Roadster to space. Few interesting things about that one. But the Tesla Roadster has a passenger they call Starman. A Starman is another David Bowie song, and they launch it up there and it's playing David Bowie's music. So David Bowie's music's going out into the galaxy, being played on an endless loop in this Tesla Roadster. By the way, Starman is an anagram for Mr. Satan, and that ties into the narrative of the man who fell to earth, and it has everything to do with David Bowie's lightning bolt over his eye. This character falls to earth. So the man who falls to earth, which ties into the story of Jeff Bezos, by the way, and New Mexico in particular, which is where the story takes place, and it's where Bezos is from. But he eventually goes back to Mars. Well, at the end of his career, David Bowie has Lazarus. Well, at the end, Lazarus rises from the dead. And in the video, he rises up. And in the lyrics to the song Lazarus, David Bowie says something about looking down on everybody after having passed on over to the other side. Well, 4 days after his supposed death, he shows up on Sky News with a mouth plumper and a bad wig and a fake accent, pretending to be somebody else. So just like Lazarus coming back 4 days after his death, David Bowie, and again, his final music video, Lazarus, comes back from the dead. I'm going to play this clip here, and this was posted by Seek the Truth 101, and that would be Rambo. And I'll post a link if you want to follow his Twitter page.
Jack, Fortress Music, and worked as in the music industry as an executive in the Bowie era, and also Bowie's fashion sense we're going to talk about as well. It's influenced the era. And Lizzie Zeta, fashion stylist, is with. Welcome to you both. Apologies again,
No
Jack.
problem.
I mean, but perhaps first sum up how you felt this morning when you heard this news.
I was just saying earlier that I actually felt that part of me had died. I mean,
Okay, if somebody you knew died, would you laugh when asked about it? No, you wouldn't, because you're not a lying crisis actor. Well, he laughs. He says, when Bowie died, a part of me died. He actually said that.
yeah, that I actually felt that part of me had died.
Smirk, smirk. And one of the things they did throughout this broadcast is they pixelated his face. Now, I think this was done intentionally. So we're thinking, oh, it's just a bad connection. No, they blurred his face to further obscure it, because it was way too obvious when you looked at his very distinctive dilated pupil. Bowie's eyes are asymmetrical. Another connection, the one eye symbolism, one eye club. You got Richard Branson with the black eye just the other day. Well, Bowie has the one eye that is, asymmetrical. And the significance here, it's the symbolism. So if you look at every picture of David Bowie, it's emphasized. One eye is different than the other. So again, the man who fell to earth is the start of this character. Lazarus would be the end. Interesting world stage character, but let me just go ahead and jump on over to Jeff Bezos, whose own life mirrors the man who fell to earth. And his eye being very distinctive and specifically and intentionally accentuated to show you. And this is the same symbol as the Black Eye Club, covering one eye. They're constantly doing this. And I'm suggesting this is one of their winks to their little club, the Cult of the Obelisk. All right, going through some comments. Thank you for the link to the YouTube video with Bro Sanchez. I'll check that out today. A lot of people are taking an interest in this Astro World, and there is a lot to go through. His video is called Travis Scott Astro World Death Ritual Proved 100% Soul Harvesting and Alchemy Used for Immortality. Let me just play about 30 seconds here.
He didn't know. He famous. He got everything going on, and it wasn't Travis Scott fault. And y'all want to engage into all that kind of fuckery dialogue instead of getting into all this Satanism and alchemy and this symbolism going on, because it's not no coincidence.
All right, that's Bro Sanchez. Great bit of commentary here on the Astro World event. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post that over on my Minds account. So if you follow me at minds.com/Infinite Plane Society, you get links to everything that we talk about. Again, that was Bro Sanchez. Thanks for the link. I appreciate it. One of the reasons why we handed out moderator status and wrenches in the early days of our think tank was we wanted people to be able to share links so we could pull our research together. Before we had Discord or any other sites as a base for operations, we did everything here, right on YouTube, right out there, and it made it very easy to share